The Iranians killed an order of magnitude more Americans under President Obama than they have under President
Trump. That's just not true.
That is absolutely true. I was in Iraq getting the EFPs that the Iranians were supplying to Jaish al-Mahdi, Assad al-Haq,
we've lost service.
Obama
didn't go to Dover Air Force Base and have to look at dead Americans coming in. Obama didn't preside over the Strait of Hormuz.
I mean, he should have, because there were my colleagues coming back from Iraq.
But not from the direct.
Who were killed by Iranian-backed
proxy groups.
Yes, those were being killed
under the first Trump term as well, and you know that as well as I do. There is no strategy. I'm for results. We just voted to again stop the war in Iran this morning in the House. But what has the president achieved? He's driven gas prices up. He's driven food prices up. The enriched uranium is still in Iran. They have a more extreme regime because the sun isn't even saying what Khamenei did, which was we won't develop nuclear weapons. The IRGC is stronger. They have more control over the Strait of Hormuz, and Americans are being killed. And the American people are saying this is worse than just a moral crime. It's a blunder. And you promised to end foreign wars, and you're getting us into this mess. You're failing.
President Trump tells Axios that he's considering a, quote, massive attack against Iran, one bigger than ever before, and he's close to making that decision now. Trump is significantly underwater when it comes to his handling of his job, as well as inflation, the economy, Iran, even immigration.
There is no strategy. I'm for results. We just voted to again stop the war in Iran this morning in the House. But what has the president achieved? He's driven gas prices up. He's driven food prices up. The enriched uranium is still in Iran. They have a more extreme regime because the sun isn't even saying what Khamenei did, which was we won't develop nuclear weapons. The IRGC is stronger. They have more control over the Strait of Hormuz, and Americans are being killed. And the American people are saying this is worse than just a moral crime. It's a blunder. And you promised to end foreign wars, and you're getting us into this mess. You're failing.
Carla, I see you shaking your head.
Yeah, I shook my head because, President Trump is doing what no American president did since Jimmy Carter. He's actually taken on this murderous regime, the Mueller regime, the IRGC. These are revolutionary nuts, and they're killing their own people, and they've killed American soldiers throughout the world for decades. President Trump is the first president to say, you know what, it may cost me politically, but I'm going to do the right thing. He's done this in Venezuela. He's working on this in Cuba. He's working around the world to make the United States, the people, safer. And there are people in Iran that want to have democracy, that have a plan. The NCRI are fighting to have democracy, clean elections, equality among the sexes, and for the religions with freedom of religion and clean courts. So there are people that want to fight back against this regime. As they get weaker, they get more of a chance. So I think this is a great opportunity for the Iranian people. But President Trump is going to have to drive these very bad actors into the Stone Age to change what's happening now.
But are they? How much weaker?
Ladies and gentlemen, whenever we examine the strategy against Iran, we are looking at one of the most complex geopolitical balancing acts of our time. At the center of this strategy lies a core objective: containing influence, preventing nuclear escalation, and maintaining stability across a deeply fragile region. First, the primary pillar of this strategy revolves around economic and diplomatic containment. Through targeted sanctions and international leverage, the goal has consistently been to disrupt funding channels for regional proxy networks and restrict access to critical technologies. Economic pressure is leveraged not just as a penalty, but as a tool to bring regional actors back to the negotiating table on firmer terms. Second, there is the dimension of strategic deterrence and coalition building. Modern strategy does not rely on isolated efforts. It depends on shared intelligence networks, integrated air and missile defense architecture, and strong regional partnerships. By strengthening alliances across the Middle East, the broader strategy seeks to create a collective defensive front that deters direct aggression while safeguarding critical maritime trade corridors. Finally, the most delicate aspect of this strategy involves addressing asymmetric challenges. The focus extends beyond conventional military readiness to counter cyber threats, proxy warfare, and clandestine intelligence operations. The overarching goal is not to invite prolonged conflict, but to establish a clear, credible position of strength that enforces stability and limits unilateral expansion. In short, the strategy against Iran is an ongoing calibration of pressure, deterrence, and alliance building, designed to protect international interests and prevent further escalation across the region.
Where are they really in this moment?
There's one thing that Congressman left out, and that is they also came to Congress this week and asked for $76 billion, a lot of money. And I'm not saying they need it or they don't need it, but what I do know is I've been running campaigns from California to New York, and right now, the American public ain't where they were in World War I or World War II. Right now, they're all out of give-a-dams, and they could give a damn about this war. What they do give a damn about is gas prices, meat prices, and not being able to afford things every day. I think because of these things, and because we're in a different place with not just 3 networks, folks are getting their own information and being fed things that they want or don't want. If you've got a Let's Go Brandon flag on your boat, you're with him. If you've got a Bernie Sanders tattoo, you're against him. But everybody in the middle right now, I'm telling you right now, is all out of give-a-dams about this war.
But I think most Americans recognize that there is a very serious connection between the conflict in Iran and all of those pocketbook issues that you were referring to earlier. And I think that even among the president's base, a lot of the reason why he won is because he ran with a very particular kind of foreign policy. Non-interventionist, we're not going to start stupid wars abroad. And I think it's possible for 2 things to be true at once, that the president was being bold, is willing to confront very bad, malevolent actors in the world, but he also went about it in a foolish and foolhardy way that seems to be pretty poorly calculated. It isn't clear that there is an obvious good path forward here. If the president imagines that he can just carry out this conflict by dropping bombs from above without ever getting any boots on the ground and make any meaningful progress, I think that seems to be a policy that's probably not going to yield results.
So true.
At this point in the discussion, host Abby Phillip shifts the conversation toward the core military assessment, asking the panel directly how severely Iran's strategic position has been degraded following the strikes. In analyzing this shift, political commentator Scott Jennings points out that the initial operations fundamentally altered the balance of power by neutralizing critical surface-to-air defense networks, effectively stripping away Tehran's primary protective shield and leaving their military facilities far more vulnerable than before. Delving on this operational perspective, national security analysts on the panel note that Iran's power projection relies almost entirely on its ballistic missile production and regional proxy network. The strikes dealt a severe blow to command and control hubs and manufacturing infrastructure, severely limiting their ability to sustain high-volume missile launches or seamlessly coordinate with proxy groups across the region. Political analyst Bakari Sellers highlights the political and strategic trade-offs of this degradation. With their external leverage diminished and military infrastructure exposed, the Iranian regime faces compounding pressures at home, where economic strain and domestic instability make recovering from physical strikes even more difficult. Ultimately, host Abby Phillip and the panelists illustrate that while Iran has been rendered demonstrably weaker in terms of conventional air defense and coordinated offensive reach, a degraded regime can still resort to asymmetric tactics like drone strikes or maritime disruptions, keeping the broader regional balance unpredictable and tense. Let's get back to the rest of the video.
Trump today, he said that any damages that Iran does to ships, cargo, or anything in the Strait of Hormuz would be paid for in Iranian money that the United States has in its possession. This is quite the contrast to what he was willing to do just a few months ago when he was willing to release sanctions on Iranian oil, potentially unfreeze hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, potentially create a fund for the Iranians. That was a pretty sweetheart deal for Iran. They didn't have to do a whole lot to get that. And they rejected it anyway. I'm coming back to the question of, is there even a little bit of strategy here, or is it just a lot of random things being said day after day?
I think what comes across as randomness is actually iteration. The geopolitics, right? The plata o plomo, silver or lead. Do you want the bullet or do you want the bribe?
Thank God
you have 2 options.
I'm
here for you.
What? Sorry.
I speak Portuguese better, but yeah, it's a different story. Like that is what defines a lot of the politics of this administration. And I think that is the absolute right approach in the Middle East. It works very well in Latin America. doesn't translate so well to Europe, but when it comes to these operations that we're seeing, they are not going forward with the, you're with us or against us, it's all or nothing, damn the consequences. It is, we're going to try this, let's see the reaction. We're going to try this, let's see the reaction. We didn't mention the fact the blockade is back on. We didn't mention the fact that those funds have not been released. There is still a sweetener, there's still a pot at the end of that rainbow. If the Iranians so choose that, if the regime says, still there, we have not reduced our forces in the region.
Haven't we really put most of it on the table already at this point? We put the biggest thing we have, which is our military, on the table first. We did that. That was the first thing we did. Then we offered them a ton of money. That didn't work. It doesn't strike me that there's a whole lot left, except what Trump also seems to be threatening, which is that maybe he might start to strike borderline civilian targets, like power plants or bridges or whatnot, which would be a line cross for us. So, do you think that there's really much more left for them to either threaten or to offer to the Iranians in this moment?
The problem is we're losing our leverage, and what's gnawing at Trump is that Barack Obama was far more effective, that Barack Obama actually got China and the EU and got a multilateral agreement that got 97% of enriched uranium out. And it turns out being statesmanlike and being smart and strategic is better than bluster for America's national interest. And now the president has made a mess of things, made a mess of the economy, but his ego will not permit him to go to Xi Jinping and the European leaders and have a multilateral solution to get us out of this mess and to help the Americans.
Before you jump in,
the Iranians killed an order of magnitude more Americans under President Obama than they have under President
That's just
Trump.
not true.
That is absolutely true. I was in Iraq getting the EFPs that the Iranians were supplying to Sheikh al-Mahdi, Assad al-Haq,
we've lost
all of the
service.
Iranian-backed militias.
Obama didn't go to Dover Air Force Base and have to look at dead Americans coming in. Obama didn't preside over the Strait of Hormuz.
He should have, because they were my colleagues coming back from Iraq.
From Iraq, but not from the direct.
Who were killed by Iranian-backed
proxy groups.
Yes, those were being killed.
Those were being killed under the first Trump term as well, and you know that as well as I do. Trump has created a disaster.
And killed under Biden and Jordan.
And what he has done is he engaged in the very regime change wars that he ran against, and he believes that he can attack
that's
the world.
there's no regime change, right? That is the crux of the Democratic criticism. You haven't changed the regime. It's not a regime
But he
change.
tried.
And
he failed.
inflation, if I may, was much higher under President Biden.
Yes.
The economy
Gas prices,
was much
oil
worse
prices,
under
much
President
higher.
Biden.
The inflation.
He pushed so much money out. He just flooded the zone with so much money with the inflation.
We can relitigate Biden, but the reality
Green New
is
Deal spending
President Trump ran on
trillions of
one
dollars
issue.
of garbage, and then he was throwing the gold bars out from the EPA, just funding left-wing causes to the tens of billions
Hold on.
of
Okay,
dollars.
the gold bars thing is not quite what you're describing, but let me just read this.
Billions of dollars.
Just to your comment about the economy. Here's a viewer comment that says, "The true war this president."
At this point in the segment, host Abby Phillip turns the discussion to Donald Trump's seemingly dynamic and fluid strategy toward Iran, questioning why his foreign policy approach appears to shift so rapidly between hardline military posture and transactional negotiating offers. Political commentator Scott Jennings argues that this fluid posture is intentional, serving as a core tactical element designed to keep foreign adversaries off balance. By maintaining a high degree of unpredictability, the administration attempts to deny Iranian leadership a stable baseline to calculate their own deterrence measures or plan counter-strategies. Building on this, political analyst Bakari Sellers highlights the internal political friction driving these shifts. The panel explores the tension between projecting maximum power abroad and maintaining focus on domestic priorities like the economy and inflation. Sellers notes that the dynamic nature of the strategy reflects a constant balancing act between reassuring domestic voters who favor avoiding costly foreign entanglements and projecting decisive strength to international partners and rivals. As host Abby Phillip pushes the panel on whether this approach creates strategic confusion among key allies, national security contributors weigh in on the transactional nature of the doctrine. Rather than sticking to traditional, rigid diplomatic frameworks, the strategy leverages intense economic and military pressure to force adversaries into a corner, followed by sudden openings for direct negotiation. Ultimately, the debate framed by Abby Phillip and the panel captures two contrasting views of this dynamic approach. Supporters on the panel view the shifting tactics as an effective, flexible tool to extract concessions from a position of power, while critics contend that the lack of a predictable long-term roadmap risks creating unnecessary escalation and eroding strategic clarity with regional partners. Let's see the last segment of the video.
Has to deal with is the war against the economy. And just to that point, this Fox News poll shows that 76% of Americans have a negative view of this economy. And now 54% of Americans say Democrats would do a better job than Republicans on the economy. So maybe, at the height of inflation under Biden, for sure, the numbers were worse. But it's been interesting because I think voters right now, their sentiment about the economy is similar, or if not the same or worse than it was under Biden. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that they felt like they got out of the woods and now they're going in the wrong direction because of some of the decisions Trump has made.
Absolutely. And I think it's, adjudicating whether Obama or Trump has a better record on Iran at this point is a bit of a moot point. We are where we are in this very difficult, intractable situation. And I think that the president, the administration needs to take a very hard look in the mirror. They need to find allies on both sides of the aisle. It is very difficult, and I suspect it was a difficult vote to cast when American service persons are being killed abroad by an adversarial regime, and one is voting against actual engagement with them. I understand why someone might want to cast that vote. If the administration doesn't seem to have a coherent strategy for dealing with this, I think it can be very difficult to actually rally support for some sort of military engagement. But this is where we are right now, and figuring out how to get out of that entanglement is. There's a reason why Joe Biden was blamed, because he was in charge at that point and things were high. Things cost too much. Well, now Republicans are in charge of every aspect of Congress. The reason I went on that tirade in the beginning of a war thing to talk about the economy was what you just said in that poll. This is what Americans really care about right now. If you ask them if they want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, they'll say no. But they say right now, that's good and that's over there. But right here is where I'm hurting. It happened under Joe Biden and now it's happening under Donald Trump, but even worse. That's why the American public, I ain't taking a side on either one of who did whatever, but I run campaigns every day, and these people are all fed up, all across America, who work hard every day, who don't feel like nobody's listening to them.
I think the danger here is that voters decide to just take the car keys away from the driver that they think is sending the car into.
Trump's done the impossible. He's given Democrats a lead on the economy. I don't think we've had that before.
In the closing section of the segment, host Abby Phillip turns to a striking set of Fox News polling data showing that a majority of voters believe Democrats would handle the economy better than Republicans. Political commentator Scott Jennings and political analyst Bakari Sellers unpack what this means for the broader political landscape, particularly when juxtaposed with foreign policy priorities. The panel explores how economic anxiety remains the primary driver for most American voters, meaning that even significant foreign policy developments or decisive military postures struggle to displace everyday cost of living concerns at the ballot box. Bakari Sellers points out that these polling figures highlight a key vulnerability for Republicans, as voters consistently rate inflation, wages, and economic stability as their top priorities. Scott Jennings acknowledges the challenge, noting that for any foreign policy strategy to resonate with the public, it must not be seen as a distraction from pressing domestic financial realities. As host Abby Phillip notes in her concluding thoughts, balancing complex international crisis management with clear economic relief is the defining challenge for leadership, as voters ultimately measure success by the impact on their daily lives. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful and want to stay updated on the latest geopolitical analyses and news commentary, please don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel for more content.